Yes? Are you seeing slides? Fantastic. Thank you so much for your patience. All right, so as we said earlier, as Lauren specifically said earlier, it's not about blaming, okay? It's not about shaming. Your choices were made and you own them, right? You experienced certain things, you responded in certain ways, you built your survival instincts. But it is time to move from survival to security. Like Lauren said, and you're going to hear a lot of like she said, because again, they're all interconnected, right? Like she said, it's tasking, it's emotionally tasking, it's heavy. Why should you bear that weight? Why should you continue to bear the weight of things that happened years and years before? What I always say is you're not a tree. You're not planted there. You can move. And as challenging, as difficult as it is, and I acknowledge that, and as I will share with you, I've been on a similar journey myself. And I can also tell you that I am on a similar journey. So some days are easier than others. Some days I have to remember myself and do the mirror work and just, I mean, when we did it earlier, I was literally tearing up. Now, this is not it's not a tool that is new to me. But again, that reconditioning, rechecking, reawareness, realizing within myself that I still have some way to go. So I want you to understand that we're not blaming you. It's just for you to understand why certain patterns exist. And more importantly, to be aware of the options that you have going forward. All right. So today we're going to be looking at survival-based emotional strategies, how they come about, how they affect connection, and how we can begin practicing secure, emotionally available behaviors without abandoning self-protection. And that is important. That balance is important, right? It is important. So let's go to, let's have a bit of interaction, you and I. All right. So if I say emotionally unavailable, what do you hear? When somebody is emotionally unavailable, what do you hear? When somebody is described as emotionally unavailable, what are the thoughts that come to your mind? Let's even say you're single, right? And somebody is interested in you and they're like, just so you know, a little bit of a heads up, I'm emotionally unavailable. What comes to your mind? What do you hear? Okay, all right. Bright red, isn't it? Like my jacket. Bright red flag. Yes, it is a red flag, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, what else? What else? What else? When somebody is emotionally unavailable, because it's the opposite of what we're looking at. So just to get a bit of clarity and to get a bit of understanding of what we think it means. Anybody else? Not ready for any form of commitment at the time. Absolutely. Not ready to love, not ready to be vulnerable, not ready to give their hearts. Yeah. If we took it a bit further, and this is all very, very nice and respectful, but might you say they're cold? Might you say the person is cold and disconnected? Might you look at the person from that perspective, right? Might you say, wow, this person just is not like we saw there, unwillingness to connect, unwillingness to be vulnerable, right? So absolutely right. That's what it is. When a person is emotionally unavailable, is that inability or an unwillingness. So there are two things there. Some people are unable to, some people are unwilling to, right? And they're unable to connect deeply with other people on an emotional level. Now, it could be a mild sense of emotional guardedness, or it could range from one end of that spectrum to a complete emotional shutdown. You know, earlier when Mr. Daudu said, when you hear I love you, what do you feel? What do you hear? What comes across when you hear I love you? For some people, it is, oh gosh, I don't know, I'm unsure, right? And we would say that's a milder reaction. For other people, it is just go. Get thee behind me. Get thee behind me. So emotional unavailability in a single person, like we said, may look like unwillingness to commit to one person. So you might find that this person is absolutely fine having minimal connections with different people. So they might not be willing to commit to one person and stay that course and see that relationship through to a decent, reasonable end. In married people, it could be a disconnection, a very quick ease to separate yourself from what concerns that person's well-being. So a practical example would be, I'm angry with you, I don't eat your food, right? You have made food for me, but because we had a quarrel yesterday, I won't come home, right? Or something affects that person, or they have a task. Say, for example, today my husband has been very helpful setting all of this up for me. But let's say I disagreed with him earlier, and his reaction is go and figure your Zoom out by yourself, right? Is that ease to detach, ease to disconnect. In parents, it can be distance. When things get heavy, they don't want to be around. Now, we've talked about attachment styles. This would be the avoidance tendency. If it is that, look, you go and find somebody else to talk to about that. I'm not available for that, right? For in colleagues, it could be guardedness. They don't interact. They've learned or heard somewhere that you don't have friends in the office. Anybody? Is that anybody's experience? You don't have friends in the office, so you came to do a job, and so you do your job and you go home. You don't interact with anybody. You don't trust anybody. Hello, right? For some other people, it's moving on from people quickly. They don't see you for 2 weeks, and you're so far in their rearview mirror that you might as well have not existed, right? Some of these people don't have friends, they don't have long term friendships. And sometimes you would find that people who are emotionally unavailable, they will interact with people, be friendly and nice, only to get what they want. Once they have it, moving on, right? They would discard people like a wet tissue because they never felt that connection in the first place. And um, when we say it is hard, right, it goes back to how we learned to love, how we learned to connect through the people that we interacted with when we were subjected to influences that were not within our control. In our childhood, we didn't choose our family. We didn't choose neighbors that we lived with. We didn't choose the environment. We didn't choose the events that happened to us. But all of those things, they affected us. They conditioned us to approach life a certain way, to approach relationships a certain way. And where we acknowledge that this is real, it doesn't just jump on us. Like I said, something happened to us. And that's why we have created those walls. And, I painted emotional availability as though it's something that is so bad. Actually, it's an intelligent response. Earlier, Mr. Daudu talked about when a young lady is involved with somebody and they show a certain behavior, and then those patterns are recycled and they keep choosing those same people. It begs the question, where's your self-preservation instinct? Where have you hidden it? What has stripped you of the desire to be cared for or looked after? Why do you keep seeking love in the wrong places? Right? So when a person is exposed to some of these traumatic occurrences, right, and they develop emotional unavailability, is an intelligent response. It is an awareness, it is a decision, it is a conscious decision. They build walls. They put walls in place to keep themselves safe. So, really, it is not a flaw. It is not a flaw at all. It's a survival instinct, and it's a primal instinct, and it's a valid instinct. Now, somebody like me grew up in a difficult, challenging household situation, right? My parents didn't want to be together. It was obvious to anyone with eyes, right? They didn't want to be, they didn't even like each other on a good day, right? But they managed to have children who had to live in that environment that was more toxic than not. When I did family systems engineering certification, our Lawrence mentioned earlier, one of the exercises we did was to go back. So we worked through something called the Tree of Life, right? And that tool was to help you unearth those things in your childhood, those things in your roots, one of the components of that exercise. And the weird thing was that I was supposed to draw this tree trunk on the left side, put unpleasant memories from childhood, right? And on the right side of the tree, it was supposed to be pleasant memories, and I could not find any. I promise you, I thought long and hard. I'm sure they were there, but those unpleasant experiences overshadowed everything. So that is where I come from. That is what I lived through. And that is what has shaped me as well. But I can tell you, like you have heard today, that if I can go on that healing journey, and like I said to you, I am still on that journey, consciously choosing myself every day, consciously choosing what serves my best interest, consciously learning and unlearning, then it is possible for you to do as well. So let's talk about the nervous system. Let's talk about the nervous system and the safety that the nervous system is supposed to give us, right? Your nervous system learned before your mind did. Your nervous system learned how to protect you before you had language, before you had insight, before you had choices and options. And that's why you can consciously, intellectually want closeness, but shut down emotionally when it shows up. Anybody in the room feeling this? Because your nervous system prioritizes safety. It's not about your happiness. It is about what feels safe to you. And our Lawrence did an excellent description of what is safe. Feeling heard, knowing that your opinions matter, knowing that your choices matter, knowing that you are allowed to have a bad day. It's not a judgmental situation. It's not that you have to constantly perform. Is anybody in any relationship or any friendship where they are constantly performing and they are constantly, presenting themselves a certain way? And then you compare that to people in your life where you can be yourself with, where you're completely chill, where you're completely relaxed, right? There's one that is safe and there's the other that is unsafe. So sometimes nervous system unsafety looks like withdrawal when you're defensive. That hyperindependence that has been talked about several times today, the people pleasing tendencies. Oh, I need to do extra, right? If I don't do it, they will not hang around me anymore. Actually, I'm not even going to rely on anybody because I can't even trust them to be there when I need it. Now, research backs it up and it explains why awareness alone cannot change behavior. It explains why awareness alone cannot change behavior. So let's come to our first task. All right, let's come to our first exercise of the day. Now, look at the screen. Look at the screen. What are your responses when you are in this situation? When emotional closeness increases, I tend to what? What do you do? When you begin to feel close to somebody, right? And this is not only romantic love, it could be friendship. When somebody's trying to come into your circle, when they're doing things that is making those walls that have kept you safe, when they are starting to be affected, what is your response? Do you withdraw? This is about reflection. I don't need to know your answers. If you want to share, happy to discuss it. But this is for you to realize where you are. Do you become hyper independent? Do you overfunction or people please? Do you become defensive? Or do you seek reassurance? Reassurance, not just at the level of, I just want to make sure we're still on the same page. It's more of, because you've not said it in 2 days, I don't even know if you love me anymore, right? And that's a self-limiting belief, isn't it? And then if we go to question 2, this strategy helped me survive when. So when you picked your answer in question 1, then you want to relate it to a certain occurrence that happened. Again, developing awareness, because it's about what is in place now and recognizing it for what it is. So this strategy helped me survive when what? Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. And like we said, it's a normal response. It's an intelligent response, isn't it? That disconnection, that survival, right? So how does it help you? What does it help you do? If I talk about my childhood a little bit further, my walls were to protect people from knowing what was going on around in the house. So I didn't then have to explain. Because if I was too friendly with you at school, the next thing would be, oh, I want to come to your house. Bro, I don't even know what will be happening in my house tomorrow. So why would I want a third party to witness perhaps chaos, maybe a quarrel, maybe somebody is hitting somebody? So my response to that was to ensure that nobody got close enough, such that we didn't even have to have certain kind of conversations. Like, could you come over, or could I come over? Could we hang? It wasn't something that I was willing to tolerate. But what does it cost me? What did it cost me? Because hopefully it doesn't cost me as much today as it did then. I didn't have long-term relationships. When my husband talks about friends that he's had for 30, 40 years, I can't I can't relate because I didn't build those connections. It kept me safe, kept me sane, because I couldn't control my environment, but it cost me the ability to make long-term connections. So I'm learning that now as an adult, right? So if you've gone through these questions, you've answered questions 1 to 4, that gives you an overview of where things stand right now with you. When we talk about trauma, when we talk about your nervous system, when we talk about a situation where somebody experiences one thing, their response is different, and another person experiences it and is completely overwhelming to them. Stress and adversity shape how our brains respond to closeness. So, if you've answered these questions, then you must understand that if your nervous system is not regulated, if it's dysregulated, then when you connect with somebody, it might even feel dangerous. It might feel scary. It might feel challenging, right? It might feel painful for you. Because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but in the line of work that I do, I come across people who want to be with somebody and they can't because they feel they're not bringing their best selves to that interaction. And it physically hurts them. It causes them physical pain and stress in their bodies because they want it, but they feel they are not deserving of it. Okay? So now that we have that understanding, let's move on to moving from survival to secure attachment. Now, secure attachment in itself is a skill set. It's not a personality type. It's not a personality style. Secure attachment is not something you either have or you don't have. Like Mr. Daudu said, you know that it can be a spectrum. When somebody says, that's the way I am, that's a fixed mindset. That's something that if anybody has that here, that's something that you need to work on. A fixed mindset will keep you limited. It will keep you small. But a growth mindset helps you understand that I can learn. I can grow. Yes, I made a mistake yesterday, but the fact that I recognize that I made a mistake is an indication of growth, right? It is an indication of growth. That awareness alone is hope. It is something that you can hold on to and say, at least I know that I did something wrong. At least I know that I said something unkind. At least I know that I said something disrespectful. And the question then becomes, how can I make it right? All right. So when you have secure attachment, it's not about constant closeness. It's not about perfect communication. It's about regulation, emotional regulation, awareness, responsiveness. And it's not about you coming to a place where you never get triggered. You become secure by acknowledging and then doing better. Acknowledging and then doing better, making conscious choices that take you from point zero to point 10. Sometimes you will slip. As long as you keep pressing forward, you are on that journey to healing already. So let's look at survival versus secure behaviors. And again, it's about drumming up that awareness. I don't want anybody to feel targeted. More importantly, I want you to feel seen. Okay? Because the fact that we're talking about this today means there's something, and you're here in this time and space. It means there's something you're supposed to get out of it. So I would hold on to that. Take it as knowledge, take it as feedback. Feedback is critical to improvement. Okay? All right. So let's look at survival based responses versus secure attachment behaviors. All right. So it's about that shift. The first survival based response we have here is avoiding vulnerability. Somebody talked about that earlier. Having that space where you just don't want people to know that you're not Superman or Superwoman. There's no chink in your armor. Everything is golden. You wear your makeup, you're in a nice suit, and everything is okay. Now, are we saying be vulnerable with any and everybody? No, you have to be tactical. It's not everybody that's in your corner. And it's only wise to recognize that. However, if you're going to be emotionally available in relationships, you need to be willing to be vulnerable. So, for a parent, it is about saying to your child, I struggled with math in school too. It was difficult. This and this and this and this are the things that I did to get through that phase. And I will never, if I had a choice, I will never go back to it. That is vulnerability. That is you acknowledging that, look, I'm human. I have a limitation as well. So, what's the secure attachment shift in that regard? Naming emotions safely. I am tired. Own it. You are not wrong. You are not bad. You are human. And the fact that you feel safe enough to be able to share that is you being emotionally available to the people that are important to you, to the connections that you are trying to build. Next, hyper independence. We've talked about that quite a lot. I'm not even going to allow anybody to come close enough so that they don't embarrass me, right? As a recovering perfectionist, I hope you understand that you can unlearn it. It does not have to be perfect. And the logic of if you want it done well, you must be the one to do it. It's not a leadership state of mind. You must be able to delegate. All right. You must recognize that as human beings, we are social animals. We are independent by nature. We are supposed to fit into each other and work with each other. And say you attempt this and it doesn't work out. I mean, 7 billion, 8 billion, I don't know what the number is today, of other options that you have. So that one person is a tiny representation of the whole sample. So you move on to somebody else, you learn and you move on. So your secure attachment shift is a willingness to be interdependent. Next, emotional shutdowns. That is a survival based response to just withdraw. And I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not even going to engage anything about it. How about you learn how to self regulate, how to condition yourself that, all right, this is what I'm feeling. Feelings are data. We're not to invalidate feelings, but what other explanations exist? This is what I'm feeling, but what is it that I'm supposed to do? We talk about going upstairs, leaving the reptilian fight or flight mode and going to your superior functioning capacity and be able to choose what is appropriate in that moment. I lived in Nigeria for most of my life. And sometimes you're driving by and then you see somebody who probably was previously well dressed because you see the pieces of a shirt and you see a tie and they are, you know, punching a conductor. And you're like, how? Something they said, maybe change, I don't know, triggered them and they were not able to go upstairs. That emotional self-regulation was not in place at all. So they felt fight or flight, I deal with my fists. Rather than, all right, I'm annoyed, I feel disrespected, right? He said something that was absolutely unacceptable, or he did not give me my change when he was supposed to give it to me. But what is appropriate in that moment? And choosing that over that emotional shutdown and reckless response to situations. Next is defensiveness. I've talked a bit about feedback today. If your response to feedback is always, oh, it's because they don't like me, or is they just want to upset me. If that is your constant, the first thing you say when somebody says, oh, actually, I noticed this, I think it can be improved in this way, or I didn't appreciate what you said, I didn't like how you said it. If your default is, it's because it's me. No. How about you adopt curiosity and ask questions? Rather than make the assumption, which is the lowest level of knowledge, how about you say, okay, tell me more. How is it that what I said made you feel a certain way? I can't guarantee that their response would be anything positive, but at least you've managed to rein that potential to be reactive in. And that's that secure attachment shift. And finally, we have people pleasing. You just give and give and give and pour and pour and pour. And there are no boundaries in place. You think it is not okay for somebody to ring you and say, oh, can you come to my place now? And your first response is there an emergency? They say no. No, I can't. And you don't feel bad about it. Somebody said something a few years ago, and they said no is a complete statement. If you find yourself over explaining, you want to check, why am I doing that? Is it a survival based response? If it is it what is needed in that moment, which means you're making a conscious choice, or is it that you just can't help it? Boundaries. We're going to talk a bit more about boundaries as we move forward. Let's highlight this love lie. Beg your pardon. Let's highlight, oh dear. There we go. Let's highlight this love lie a little bit, right? This belief shows up everywhere in relationships, in work, even at church. There are a few of us Christians here, right? If I need somebody, if I need help, then it means I'm weak. I think that scripture, if your strength fails in the day of adversity, then there is weakness at play, kind of makes us look at it in a different way. But that scripture is not talking about people because humans are wired for connection. It is God. So if it is that you are trusting God, that means you acknowledge that your strength is weak, your spiritual strength, and work on that. But if you need another human being, or you need help, or you need support, it doesn't mean you're weak. It is a love lie. Needing other people doesn't make you weak. Pretending you don't need anybody actually can damage your relationship. Picture a situation where a couple live together and somebody needs to lift something heavy. And the lady decides, well, I don't need anybody, so I'm just going to do it by myself. And she does it over and over again. How is the partner supposed to interpret that? Like, you don't need me for anything. And that's just a basic example, talking about physical strength. But if at any point in time you don't ask for help, you don't need anybody because you believe it makes you look a certain way, that is a lie. And that belief, it needs to go. It needs to go. When a relationship is secure, if you're going to be emotionally available, then you need to allow mutual reliance. You need to allow people to support you. You need to allow people to do some things for you. It's not, if it's coming from a place of I am weak, then it is wrong. If it is something that you're capable of handling on your own, absolutely fine. But if you tell this lie that if you need somebody, then it's a reflection of weakness, then you need to fix that point of view. So let's do a bit of reframing. Another exercise for us. I did warn us that this is going to be workshop style. Let me check my time while you read what is on the screen. Okay, thank you. That's my man, my daddy. All right. So, what is your go-to survival response? So we're doing a reframing exercise now. What is your go-to survival response? Fill that in. Like I said, if you want to share, share, but it's more for your awareness. All right? It's more for your awareness. What is your go-to survival response? And then follow-up question, where does it show up? Where do you find it happening more? Identify where it shows up. Okay? If we do all of this talking and there's no practical activity, then change is less likely, all right? So that is why this is important. Where does it show up? What's your go-to response? Do you withdraw? Do you cry? Do you shout? Do you yell? You know, those are some of the examples that might come to mind. And then when does it happen? Where does it show up, right? And then what is a secure alternative that you can practice? And we're going to look at communication in a second. But what is a secure alternative that you can practice? An example that you can use right now instead of withdrawing or defending is to state the feeling and state what you need. All right? It does not have to be perfect. It works. The more you do it, the better you get at it, right? But if you use a statement, a simple statement like, right now I feel this and I need that, that is you moving from survival. That is you recognizing that in that moment, you are a bit limited and there are people around you that can help you, right? Or it might even be that you develop your own go-to strategies. So somebody like me, I can be a stress eater, right? When I'm, worried and I'm just, feeling stressed about something, I'm not going to tell you what I eat in case you thought that was coming. But anybody who knows me personally knows what my what do you call it, my comfort food is, and it's not this. It's not what you are thinking. It's nothing special, but that's what I eat that grounds me and makes me feel you've got this in hand. If this and this are available and you can combine them together and they enter your body, everything is all right. So it could be right now I feel stressed and I need what I eat. Again, healthy habits, all right? Not things that are detrimental to yourself and to your body and to your relationships. Okay, so now let's look at nervous system safety and emotional regulation. Like I said, communication. Communication is something that you need to be regulated before you engage in. If you don't regulate yourself before you communicate, you're going to damage the situation. And that emotional availability that we are looking for, that we're working towards, is going to be further compromised. Okay? When you are in that heightened emotional state, when your nervous system does not feel safe, you don't want to communicate in that moment. You don't want to communicate in that moment. You want to gain clarity first, right? So we're not talking about you being calm because sometimes that's not what the situation requires, right? There's this psychotherapist, Gbemi, she works out of America, and there's a way she frames this, and she says, if I change it for you, if you're not Nigerian, apologies, I will find another way to explain that, or if somebody can put it in the chat for me. If I change it for you, then it needs to be that I chose to change it, which means I sat within myself and I decided changing it is what this situation requires. So calm is not what the goal is. It's about being regulated and being intentional. In some situations, that is, you need that, quick turnaround of things. I give you an example. When our son was a baby, he had jaundice, yeah, and we hadn't seen it. So we went to the hospital. We hadn't seen it for the first 3 or 4 days of his life. And then my son-in-law picked it up and we hurried down to the hospital. And this nurse was saying something about you needed to make a deposit and changing it was required. Do you see what I mean? So I was like, are you kidding me? We literally left this hospital how many days ago? And you're asking for maybe a tenth of what we paid for the whole delivery and all of that. And you're saying you need that to put my child under phototherapy light. And it was a little bit of change, but it was conscious changing, right? Because that's what that situation requires. So let's look at a few practical tools to ensure that you are regulated before you approach communication. Remember, we are working on emotional availability. Emotional availability. So these are some tools for you to consider, some tools for you to look at when you are in that state where it calls for regulation. And to be honest, we mostly require regulation because there are triggers all around us. Remember, we're coming from that place of trauma, isn't it? There are triggers all around us, and sometimes people don't even intend to hurt. Quite a lot of the time, maybe I'm seeing too much of good in humanity, but most times I don't think people set out to say something disrespectful. They want to trigger, but things happen, right? Things happen around us, and we need to be able to go somewhere and regulate ourselves and then approach the situation. So these are some tools that you can use. You have grounded breathing, which is about exhaling slowly, which calms your nervous system. So you've been triggered, you're in a situation, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Do we want to practice that now? If you're in a space where you can do this and people will not look at you like, is everything all right? Just take a deep breath for me from your belly in and then slowly. All right? In through your nose and out through your mouth very slowly. It calms your nervous system, calms your body, and then you're able to then make a decision. It also helps you go upstairs, you see. All right. Next, you have naming that emotion. Okay, on the screen you have routine and environment. It's about what you do on a regular basis, right? And we've talked about how it is helpful for you to have certain practices, certain go-tos, so that they become your default. Okay. And when you identify that certain things happen in certain environments, then you want to be mindful. Sometimes you can't control it. Somebody asked a question earlier about if you're still in that traumatic situation, what can you do? Well, you have data. That data tells you that this thing is likely to happen. The odds that it will happen are 9 out of 10. So you are prepared. You're going into that space. Maybe you want to have a conversation, a difficult conversation with somebody you don't have a choice but to have a conversation with. But because you have the foreknowledge that this is likely to happen, you're better prepared for it. Okay, so it's about having those routines and then being conscious of your environment. If it is somewhere that you can remove yourself from, then by all means, remember, you are not a tree. And next, you have naming emotions. If you are able to calm yourself down and identify that emotion, you're less likely to be reactive. All right. So I'm feeling a headache, right? What is responsible for that headache? And then you explore things like, so a headache is not an emotion, and I appreciate that. But you explore, have I had enough water? Have I eaten? Did I sleep well? Right? So if you are able to identify that your headache is the frustration you're feeling is as a result of your headache, right? Then you can now begin to work out how you got there. By the time you put all those thoughts in your head and you're thinking about it, you have not been reactive, I can promise you, because you have taken the next 10 seconds to say, what exactly am I feeling? Why did I respond in that manner? I was short with that person. Why? Right? And you go through that reflective cycle and you're like, why was I short with that person? Oh, I'm tired. And you have not been reactive, okay, in that moment. Next, Pause. The power of the pause. The pause interrupts your automatic responses, right? And if you deploy that pause just before naming your emotions, you're going to, be able to get a handle on things. Remember, the goal is regulation. Then your body posture. We're talking about your physical cues, right? What are those physical cues that communicate safety to you? Okay, identify those and deploy them. Okay, so for somebody, they fidget. Okay, when they fidget, it's a tool to calm them down. So somebody else somewhere might be like, oh, you're always touching your hair. We all have hair, hopefully, right? Touch your own, I touch my own. If that is what sorts you out, then you go there, right? And I have two other ones here that are not necessarily self-regulation tools in themselves, but if they follow something like the pause, then it helps you maintain control, right? Alternate explanations. So this person has said something triggering. What else might explain their behavior? Might it be they misunderstood something that you said, which means you have an opportunity to explain and clarify? Might it be that they are the ones dealing with a certain kind of trauma? Yeah, in as much as we are focusing all of this on ourselves, we must understand that people around us are going through stuff as well. So sometimes it's not all about you. So if you're able to come to that understanding that that person is dealing with something, I use this example with my children every now and again. I say, if somebody says, you are a cow, somebody says you are a cow, right? They say you are a cow. They look at you and they say you are a cow. Alternate explanation. Maybe their eyes are, maybe they need to go to Specsavers, right? If you come to that alternate explanation, where is the reaction going to come from? You're probably going to burst out laughing like, are you serious? Is everything all right? Okay, so alternate explanations actually help you regulate yourself. Then you have support systems. Who can you give a ring and say, I am incensed right now, right? And you know that those people can talk you off a ledge. They can talk you down and say, hey, okay, hang on a minute, and then maybe remind you of all those regulation tools. Now, they're not fixes, they are supports to get you to where you want to be. Now, let's create your regulation plan very quickly. Very quickly. What are the early signs of dysregulation? Now, this is you learning about yourself, right? Some people feel discomfort, dysregulation in their tummy. Some people, when they are nervous, their palms get sweaty. So, what are those early signs? What are those things that you can quickly pick up on and say, all right, I'm getting to that point. I need to interrupt this, right? Then make a conscious decision. When triggered, I will pause for 10 seconds. So for my younger ones that I coach, I say count back from 5 to 1. Because you're counting backwards, you are retraining your brain, and it would help you. It will help adjust you, hopefully. If you are not too incensed. The question now is, will you remember to count back? But remember, the more you do it, the better you get. All right. One regulation tool I will practice is go down the list, make a plan. Remember scenario planning. What is it that I would adjust my default to? As you do it, you will get better. And then after regulating, I can re engage by doing what? Would I apologize? It can be a case on a case by case basis. What are those things that I can then do that I can re-engage with? How do I show up? How do I present myself once I've been able to get that under control? So you've written all of this down. It becomes something that you can go to every now and again, and it can help you in those challenging moments. The more you do it, the better you get at emotional availability. We're getting close to the end of my presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A. All right, fantastic. Are we still together? I've not checked in with you for a minute. Are we still together? Thumbs up if we're still together. Okay, all right, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. So let's look at boundaries as connection tools and understanding that boundaries do protect relationships. Like we said, you can't keep pouring, you can't keep giving. You will get to a point where you will not be able to continue and things will escalate. Like somebody who continues to allow, right? What was it that Sadaudu said earlier? I forgot it. But the person who continues to take everything, kind of like a dumping ground. At some point, you will get to that point where you're like, actually, hang on. And then your response might not match the trigger. So, to protect your relationship, it's important to have boundaries, right? When I teach identity, I explain that when you know who you are, then there are things that you do, and at the same time, there are things that you don't do. So, in this case, when you have defined who you are, there are things that you allow and there are things that you don't allow. Some people in romantic relationships call them deal breakers. All right. So, what are those things that you will not have? And these are things that you will enforce that are not dependent on the other person. So, it's not a case of I don't expect people to call me after 10 o'clock. The question is, are you going to pick up the phone? Are you going to put your phone on do not disturb once it is 10 o'clock, right? It's about putting those boundaries in place to ensure and preserve those relationships. So some people say things like, oh, they don't talk to anybody in the morning. I'm not sure how that works in a marriage because I like to talk, right? But if it is something that is so important to you, perhaps you want to have that conversation, right? And ensure that there's an understanding. So they they don't push people away, but they make those connections sustainable. Okay? Emotional presence actually requires limits. It requires limits. So let's look at a communication framework and just put things in perspective. This is a three-part communication framework that is about communicating the emotion, identifying the need, and making a request. All right. Mr. Daudu talked earlier about situations where people are expected to know what you want, but you have not clarified it to them. That's not sustainable, right? You're putting that responsibility for naming your expectation on another person. No, that will not make you emotionally available. They don't have psychic powers. And if they did, I'm sure they will use it on things like winning the lottery or, I don't know. They would deploy it in other ways than to constantly be guessing what it is that is on your mind. All right. So if you're going to develop that secure communication behavior, you should consider using this framework. And like we said, identify the emotion, state the need, and make the request. All right. So the example you have on the screen is I feel overwhelmed. That is the emotion. I need reassurance. And then I'm asking for a hug. You have done most of the work. That's what this is about. You have sat with yourself and you have said, this is what I need. And this is how I want that need met. And then you put that forward to the people that you care about and that care about you so that they know exactly how to meet that need for you. So, in closing, I want to zoom out a little bit and help you think of a time where you felt disconnected, right? You felt disconnected, you felt unloved, you felt less than whole, less than yourself. And somebody, I don't remember what the speakers mentioned, it was Io Lawrence who mentioned the fact that when trauma happens to you, when these life events happen to you, what they do is change you from your original self, from your authentic self. Okay. So sometimes you have glimpses, right? And it's like, well, I am not supposed to be like this. And when you do that road mapping exercise that she talks about, it's quite an eye opener. These are things that are done in therapy spaces, right? So every time that you've thought about wanting more, being better, showing up different, showing up better. If you think back to those times and you begin to create that picture in your mind, then you can begin to walk towards it. Okay? So it's about learning. You can't rewrite the past, you can't undo what has happened, but you can move forward. And that is my encouragement to you. Please understand that healing is not linear. I hope I've used my examples and I've made it clear to you that it can be a roller coaster, but you have the goal in sight. You have the end in sight. When you are aware and you repeat these behaviors that we have gone through today, it will build that security. It will tell you, I've done it before. I can do it again. I chose myself in that instance. I can do it again. And with that awareness, you continue to get better and better. And finally, emotional availability is a daily choice. It is a choice to be emotionally available because your relationships depend on it. So, finally, one behavior, one secure behavior that I will practice this week is what? Write it down. Write it down. One secure behavior I will practice this week is, write it for me. That is your action point. That is your call to action. One secure behavior I will practice this week is what? Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. God bless you.